Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. Today's guest does a little bit of everything: actor, singer, dancer, comedian, as well as the marketing strategist for Broadway Records and the social media guru for Scholar PR. Let's just jump right in and meet today's guest, Grace Aki. Grace, hello.
Hi. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. No problem. So before we get into all the stuff you do, I always like to get to 30-second bio of my guest. So who is Grace in 30 seconds?
Okay. Grace in 30 seconds is a North Georgia brought up girl who also has some Japanese roots with a comedy background and moved to New York to say, I should be an actor. And then thought, wait, what if I also needed to make money to live? And so I used all of my multi-hyphenate skills to make my way all the way to where I am now. Like you said, with, being a marketing strategist, I went to school for entrepreneurship. And so I've been able to utilize my artistic skills as well as my business ones. And that is how I've been able to function in this very modern artistic society. So there you have it.
You're one of those that needs money to live type people, huh?
So annoying.
I
really wish I had a trust fund, but still waiting on that. So
okay, understandable. You're like the rest of us. Perfect.
Yeah.
So were you always into musical theater growing up, or is that something you discovered a little bit later in life?
Oh, I was just really annoying. I loved to perform. I was, I started dancing when I was 3 years old. When I was 5, I went into a puppetry camp and I was like, oh, I can use my funny voices and I can use my body and it's not even me. I'm just like becoming a character. And then I took a musical theater camp, 2 years later that was like, oh, I have to do this because I loved dancing and I loved talking and then I could do them at the same time. What a concept. And I loved making people laugh. And one of the first musicals I ever saw was My Fair Lady. And I was like so drawn in on someone who could make you laugh and feel something and be a character, but also still be like stunning. And I didn't get to see that growing up a lot. So that's kind of how I got into musical theater.
Have you ever written a puppet dance show? No, I'm just curious.
Not yet, but you know what? I'm young. There's still time.
Okay, good to know.
Well, I will say the first time I ever did puppetry, I obviously like really loved making people laugh. And the first time I ever did it, I chose a Weird Al song that was kind of like the spoof off of American Pie. And it was a song about Star Wars. And so I had all these Star Wars puppets. I was like 7 years old trying to like do a bit to this Weird Al song. And they're like, who's this kid? So yeah, that was my first time doing that. They danced.
Now, you said you're a multi-hyphenate. So you said you did the business side and all that other stuff. So when you were in school, where did you decide to go afterwards? Was it the art side or was it the other side?
Yeah, I basically went to school for about like a year and a half, 2 years in Tennessee. And I was auditioning for a theater company at the time. And then I kept seeing all these opportunities for marketing in the community. And I was like, I feel like you could do this. And basically I quit school to become a marketing director for a theater company at like 19. So I was choreographing, I was performing, but I was also, and I built all these partnerships. And again, I'm a child and people hear my voice and they're like, what do you know about this? But I always had a knack for it because I enjoyed, selling, but also I enjoyed getting to bridge community gaps, especially in the arts, because I think that the arts are for everybody. And so often, especially in the South, people would go, well, the artistic community is here or the artistic, and I'm like, it's everywhere. When you're a kid and a traveling troupe comes to your school, they're not like, well, we're only going to perform for 4 kids. They perform for the whole school and usually people enjoy it. And so that's just always been something I've been really passionate about, is bringing the arts to every community. And it's kind of formed every bit of my like marketing, social media, and all that stuff for every single division that I've been a part of.
It's funny how people talk about the arts as like you said, only for 4 people. But guess what? You listen to the radio, you listen to Spotify. That's the arts. You go to a movie, you go watch TV. Like it's all arts, people.
Yeah, it's all arts. And I think that like people talk about their favorite Netflix show to binge or whatever. And I'm like, those people went to art school. Like you can't extrapolate the things that you love. If you quote Goodfellas or you quote The Godfather all the time, and then you don't value somebody who like went to school for this, it's just like, or not even goes to school, but like chooses to perform or chooses to, become a lighting designer. It's like, you understand that they're all connected, right? I wish we taught that more in school because we always, defund the arts so often. And I'm just like, you're taking away the next Godfather. You're taking away the next thing that you're going to love. So yeah.
Yeah. Instead of a 20,000 seat stadium, how about just a 17,000 seat stadium and use the rest of that money for the arts?
Right. It's really not hard. I mean, everybody including in that stadium, like you said, the songs that they play in between some player scoring some goal or something, you're playing We Will Rock You. Do you really think that Queen was out here being like, please, you know what I mean? Like that's the arts. So
exactly. So you left Georgia and you came up to New York at some point. What was that like?
So I moved to New York for a boy, like a fool. And I thought, oh, if I move to New York, I'm an actor. Somebody will find me. Like somebody will just cover me like an idiot. And that's kind of what happened. I just thought, oh, because I was a big fish in a small pond, and I love that pond very much still. But I realized that New York is so big. At the same time, though, because I come from a small community, I recognize that I should treat everything like it's a small community, because the theater community, especially in New York, is, even though it feels so big and we think Broadway's so big, and I'm like, same 12 people. You know what I mean? Like it's the same 5 companies, it's the same 6 producers or whatever. And it's just like, treat everybody like you would treat them if you were to see them, at a Sunday at church, or at the grocery store. Like treat them like you know them, kindly, respectfully, but also like, don't be scared. And I think that I really psyched myself out thinking that like New York was this big, scary place, because it is in many ways, but also like, just be yourself. And if you pretend that it's a community theater, it is a community and it is theater. So sure.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. It's like, as huge as the community is, it's everybody knows everybody. I was doing an event, and this guy in New York City was talking to another guy in Vancouver, Canada, and they knew the same composer. And it's ridiculous how small I find that. I'm just talking to people in London, know people in Seattle, which
that's the thing. Like even when I work with Broadway Records, like we have a partnership with the National Theater. Now I know the National Theater. When I go to London in the fall, like I'm gonna go visit them and be like, "What's up?" Like I know we've worked on albums together. Like we did, the Lehman trilogy and all this stuff, and it's just like it's so small, even globally. Now that I'm saying it, like it's just, it really is tight. And so if you can approach those things with the same grace that you would if your town is like 12,000 people total, you'll probably be in a better place. And so I'm glad that I had that understanding coming from a small place, coming to a big city, because otherwise I would have been eaten alive.
Well, that's a great attitude to have anyways going in, accept everything and treat everyone kind, because you never burn bridges and things like that. That'll bite you at some point. So you got to New York. How did you get involved with Scholar PR?
Yeah. So Liz and I worked together at Broadway Records, and I just found her work to be so good. She's so keyed into every, industry facet that she, as far as like, I've worked with a couple of PR companies. She as an individual has done more, I feel like, than so many of those major companies. And it's kind of mind-boggling to me. So much so that I was just like, hey, what if we partnered? And like, I do social content strategy, because she's like, I can't do that. She's so keyed in with her clients. Like she's booking, she's doing these like exclusives, she's working on that stuff. But she was like, I need to get my name out there for social, because that's the thing, guys. Like I truly, anybody listening, like, I hate to tell you, if you aren't good at social, find someone that is. It is an investment. It's part of your business. Like, I know that it sucks because a lot of people are like, well, I'm just not good at that. Or they think, oh, I'll just like look at some other people. No. You either get it or you don't. And there's no judgment there. You just do or you don't. And I like to work with people that don't, because I'm like, you can trust me. I have your best interests at heart. And so she and I started working together, and I was able to make sure that her clients saw that she was advocating, and these are all the press breaks she gets, because she's so good at her job that I was like, people should know. And so that's how we started doing it. And then she was like, okay, you've got these projects coming up. Let me be a part of that and like promote those. And so we've kind of, and that's honestly like, especially like women in business and women in the arts, like we have to be each other's cheerleader. We have to, if we can barter, if we can do, I mean, that's how we get by. So that's kind of how we got together. And it's just been a really great partnership ever since. But it was because of her great work with Broadway Records. I mean, the fact that this one individual has started this company and is promoting the national, albums, Roundabout Theater. I mean, like, there's so many exclusives that she's gotten to do. The last approved Sondheim album, Assassins, we promoted and marketed and like shot music videos. She got those exclusives out. Like, she's just so good at what she does. And it's something that is inherent to you as a person in a business, or it just isn't. And I'm so enthralled by her.
Well, for some people out there, they might not know exactly what a PR person does or a PR company. So if you could just tell people kind of what it goes through and what people should expect.
The bare minimum, I would say, is that I always approach it with, like, if you don't know what you don't know. So if you're doing this groundbreaking project and nobody knows about it, it's not as groundbreaking, right? So like, as an example, I've been working on this play and I was premiering it with like She NYC right now. And so a month ago, Liz and I were like, okay, cool. That's happening in a month. What can we do before then? And so she was able to schedule, as like a playwright, some interviews that kind of talked more about like my artistic scope. She strategizes like, who are the best outlets to communicate that with? Okay, cool. Like, Grace has a great like feminist base. I want to reach out to this like Grain of Salt magazine because they cover like feminist and arts and pop culture. Great. So that interview, like, she looks at each project and says, okay, where would that fan base thrive? And where are opportunities to where like maybe they don't have a fan base there right now, but they could in the future. And so pitching those things, pitching those interviews, pitching podcasts, for example, opportunities to connect audiences that aren't as familiar with an artist's work. And I'm speaking as like an artist, like as playwright performer, but like she even works with like as a whole, like a theater company, and to say like, great, so this show is opening up with that theater company in 2 months. Can we schedule some actor interviews? Can I get maybe like a song that's going to be in that musical as an exclusive first listen with a publication? So it's basically a lot of like before the thing comes out work for her, as far as, what type of promotion, and then being able to like have great relationships with different publications, podcasters, artists, interviewers. It's like a constant Rolodex. I don't know how she keeps up with her book. Like, I don't know what like Google file that looks like. But it's essentially just like, it changes every single project. But the truth is it's all beforehand. And then after something comes out, like an album, for example, with Broadway Records, how do we continue to promote that project? Especially like we've done Grammy campaigns together. Like last year, we were pushing out the Stephen Schwartz album. We were pushing out this Burt Bacharach album, possibly one of Bert's last, fully composed pieces. And how are we protecting that artist and that IP, and at the same time continuing to, like, you can tell I live in New York. How do you promote the project past the point of its initial release, and how do you build anticipation up beforehand?
And how do you choose people? PR people must get approached all the time, like, represent me. Do you take on people based on what is it that draws the PR team to that?
I think it's like how much, your bandwidth is. Like, if you know that you've got 4 clients that month that have a show coming out, or, an album release, like, okay, cool. Well, this is a smaller project, and they need me to promote like a single release, like a music single release. That's not going to take up as much time as like a full musical production at a theater company, where you need to like make sure that you get producers into the show. Sometimes there's booking involved. It really depends. I really think that she has to discern what she's able to take on month to month, because she does so much. And you're right, like, people do come up, but also like, it's an investment. And so a lot of people don't realize that investment is going to literally cost them, and I think that they're both able to decide, like the client and Liz are able to decide like what level of impact that she's going to have. If it's going to be like a month-long project, great, it's going to look like this. If it's just 2 weeks of lead time, it's going to be shorter. So yeah, it really does depend.
So tell us a few about some of the clients you have. I know I want to talk about more about Broadway Records, but maybe a few of the other ones. I know there's a theater company and things like that.
Yeah, Abingdale Theater Company for sure in New York, which is funny because even with Broadway Records, we've been able to partner together. There have been times where an artist individually, like Ryan Bauer Walsh, who was the first like queer artist to put out a queer lullaby album. They were able to work with Liz with Broadway Records and as a separate client. So maximizing like double the amount of coverage, so much so that they had like a full opening night for like Pride weekend. And then there was like a signed, CD release and all that stuff, because there's only so much bandwidth that like Liz can offer each of our music clients with Broadway Records. But we're like, hey, she is really good. You're going to love working with her. This is as much as we can offer because, as she is like we are her client, right? But if you want more coverage, it would look like this, and you can hire her separately. And a lot of times people do take that avenue because they see that it works. Because you just always have to be honest with your clients and being like, I want to do the most for you. She's going to do the best job, but she also has so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
And there's only so much coverage, right? But yeah, and also like, the Oscar Hammerstein farm situation, like that just happened, 2 weeks ago. She knew that was going to be just like a 2-month client leading up to this big press event. They were honestly, most of the clients have come from referrals because people like working with her. So it's basically, it's word of mouth because like we said, it's a small community. It's literally like, okay, cool. Like this worked with her. And a lot of people are turned off by firms right now because they feel like tiny, tiny, tiny bits of this like major, corporation or something. Whereas I am a proponent of small business, especially like individual women. And I think that people are noticing there is a stark difference between like knowing the person's name and like having that connection versus like this big company that's kind of like, hey, so you've got this interview next week. Hope you're fine with that. And it's just like, well, wait, that doesn't work with my time schedule, or that's when I'm in tech or something. There's just a different level of kindness and approach that I appreciate. But yeah, it genuinely changes every single month. There are a lot of clients that stay on seasonally. Broadway Records is all the time. I know that for sure. Abingdale Theater Company all the time for sure. But individual clients like Ryan, even Ryan Rafferty, like there are so many clients that were just doing like a month of a show like me right now, where they don't need to hire all the time. So her client roster changes every single month, depending on a person's project.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Like individuals, you're not going to have something out all the time. It doesn't matter how big you are. You're going to have down periods where you're working on something. So that makes total sense. And I love the fact that she knows the people's names, right? They're not just a number like 24601, right? You're not just a number in it. And it's fantastic about that. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about Broadway Records as well. I know they're a client. I talked to Robbie Roselle. I interviewed him not too long. He was fantastic. But I'd love to hear
I should say,
a little bit more.
I think I said I want to apologize because I think I was calling it Abingdale Theater Company. I was thinking Frank Abingdale Jr. Because I don't know why I have Catchy Began if in my head, but it's Abingdon Theater Company. So I just wanted to correct myself because they are great.
You had a show last night, right? So maybe
I did. I'm a little broken. Yeah, but you were talking about my lovely, lovely friend Robbie Roselle. So thank you. Let's keep going there.
Perfect. Yeah, let's talk about Broadway Records. I'd love to hear a little bit more and what you do as the marketing strategist and how it relates with the Scholar and just that sort of thing.
Yeah, so basically I am Broadway Records liaison to Liz, essentially, because they have enough going on. It's a major record label, again, Grammy award-winning record label, but it's also like a couple of people that really run it. Overall, they're owned by Cutting Edge, which is like a major company based in LA. But as far as Broadway Records is concerned, it's a small group, and I came on as a social media person for them. Like in the pandemic, they were like, we just need social content. I was like, I get that. I can do that. Also, I'm at things in New York that are where our clients, like one of my friends, Drew Gasparini, is a composer that is a Broadway Records artist. He does, 54 Below concerts. I'm at those 54 Below concerts because we're friends, but I'm also there to capture content. And so the content is always really authentic because like I'm genuinely here as a supportive friend, person, fan. So the content always it looks curated in a personal way because I think with like the rise of micro influencers and stuff, like people are more geared, especially with TikTok, towards people and not products. And people aren't products. Mm-hmm. So how I wanted to approach things, and this is I guess why like they ultimately went with me to do this, was because I think that the future of records and capturing and musical theater especially is people based and not this is a CD. It's like that doesn't sell anymore. People don't always own a physical copy of a disc because they don't have a CD player, right? So how can we get people to listen to these historic recordings? How can we get people to listen to that stuff? You have to get them enticed with the musicians, the history, the experience of musical theater, because that's how people are finding new works and relating to classic works now. It's not because they're at the store and they're seeing a cover of a CD that they're like, oh, cool, I like Sondheim, I'll buy that Assassins album. No, I'd rather you watch a video of Steve Pasquale singing his face off in the studio. And that's when you go, I've got to buy that album because I want to hear that in my ears, through my headphones, whatever. And that's what I feel like the future of musical theater is. So that's what I started to do with social content. Well, lo and behold, a couple months later, the current, at the time, the marketing director left. And so I was like, what if I took on some of those duties though? Because I really like doing this. And they let that happen, which was great. And so I became kind of like the liaison between social content and Liz to promote the PR side, which was great because I didn't have to go through another avenue of a person. I was like, I know what content's going to come out. I know what content I want to be out in the world. And that's kind of what I started doing with Broadway Records. And it's been a great relationship ever since. And then since then, as we've come out with these, like the Carolina Change album, which was massive with Roundabout Theater Company, and working, I never thought in a million years I would be walking into a studio and saying, "Hi, Tony Kushner." Like that's like nuts, But it was just it was so fascinating to me to be like, okay, when we're even approaching this conversation about us doing the album, my job is to go, okay, how do we announce that? What does that look like? How is that going to be perceived? What content do we capture there? How are we respecting the actors? Because as a person who comes from acting and artistry, I care deeply about how they feel in the studio. And what I noticed, and this is no slight to like literally anybody that I work with, by the way, but I realized that so often the people that are doing the thing aren't considered in the conversations that are happening on the back end. So I was like, hey, are we letting the actors know that we're going to film? And then I would hear, oh, they'll be fine. Like not from our team, but from somebody else's team. And I was like, I think I would really appreciate it if we would ask their consent that they're going to be on camera. Because I personally, after a 5-show weekend and getting up at 10 a.m. on a Monday morning to sing my face off for a Broadway cast album, I might not look my best, So why don't we let them know that that's going to happen, and if that's okay, and let them know that that's coming from us. I want them to have a good feeling about Broadway Records. When they see our name, I want them to feel cared for and taken care of and all those things. And so that's just been a really fun part of this job, has been connecting the business side with how I feel as like a performer and respecting, because at the end of the day, this business is small. Like I would run into those, rooms and I would see friends of mine. Like we were just doing a castle. I can't say what it is because it hasn't been announced, but I will say that it's working with 2 historic composers. And it was this out of town tryout of a show. And we got to capture the recording, but one of my friends was in the show and it was his first cast recording that he's been on ever. And so he walked out of the booth and he was like, Grace, can you like come and sit in here while I record this? And so I have like this little video of him performing like for the first time. And he's in front of these like massive composers that have like won Tony Awards and all this stuff. And I got to be there for that. And it was so real and special. And people were like, oh, are you guys friends? And we're like, yeah, this is great. So it was just really lovely. And I've really loved getting to do that, to be there for that.
Is there a campaign that you just loved doing that just kicked ass? It's one of your
Mhm.
favorites. Not that the album is your favorite or whatever, anything like that, but just the campaign itself that you went, this is awesome. I'm so did this.
I mean, I have to say the campaign for Assassins was incredible because we got to have the last like tip of the hat yes from Stephen Sondheim himself. A week after I thought, okay, I'm going to be in the studio with Stephen. Like I literally was like, oh my God, this is going to happen. He passed away. And that broke my heart. But it was also like, I have so much responsibility to honor this work, this person, and the people that have been a part of this because they closed early because they got COVID. There was a COVID spread in the cast. And so I wanted to make sure that we approached it with so much respect. And I said, this was one of the first times that I kind of had free range to do whatever I wanted. And like within, boundaries. But at the same time, like they said, what are you thinking? And I was like, this, and this. This is how I want, the cover to look. Like, worked with Robbie. I was like, it's really important to me that we capture the feeling and look of this cast. And like my friend Ethan, who is very much a part of that, he plays the balladeer and everything. I was like, the imagery of him with the guitar in front, like that is what this classic stage company production was with the cast behind him. And that's the cover. And it meant so much to me. Like I advocated hard when I was like, and it wasn't like a battle or anything. I was just like, there's just a difference in putting Assassins on a cover, which could be designed gorgeously, obviously, like Robbie's amazing at what he does. But also the thing about this that was the people that made it so great, like Judy Kuhn, Steve Pasquale, Will Swenson, everybody was a part of it. And Brandon Uranowitz, like, so getting to be there to capture it, getting to be in charge of like the music, as someone is like working on construction, like, the music videos that we were able to put out, I put together these like influencer boxes, like strategically with like just a couple of people to say, like, I know you were a really big fan of the show. And it wasn't like they weren't a lot of like, quote, famous people, but I knew that their audiences and their reach were the same niche Sondheim audience. Mm-hmm. And it would get it out to more people that did not get to go see Classic Stage Company's production, but would listen to this on repeat. And it's worked. And it just brought me a lot of joy to have the trust of my team to put that out there. It was all very collaborative. So I'm not taking credit for all of it by any means, but it was just freaking great. It was great. And I'm really proud of it. And I will always be able to say, like, that meant something to me. It meant something to our community. And I think that the Sondheim estate continued to voice that they were very happy with this, especially John Weidman, who wrote the book. I mean, it's its own play, essentially, with music. And so having his blessing multiple times, that was just, I can't top it.
It's great to hear the stories and meet people like yourself who aren't necessarily the front line. You like everybody who hears the album knows the singers and knows the writers, but without people like yourself and Liz and everybody else on the teams, this would never happen. And I always appreciate and I always want to have you people on because I want to talk to you because everybody talks to them, the stars, and I understand why.
And they're great. And they're great at talking.
They are.
But I agree with you.
Without you guys, like it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So thank you for coming on and telling us all about this stuff. Is people need to know it's a team. Yeah. It's a team effort to put all this together. Agreed. So what's going on with Grace? Let's talk a little bit about you. What I know you had, like, as of the recording of this, you had a show last night and you're having the second performance tomorrow night. Tell us a little bit about that and maybe what's in the future.
So I've been working on this solo show for 3-4 years now. And I've just developed it through workshops, and it's kind of like a hybrid between like a play and a stand-up show because I have a background in stand-up. So I like people to feel comfortable to laugh, and that's why I tell people it's a stand-up show. But at the end of the day, it's also written like a play, and so I just want to always be transparent about it. But I worked with Seth Barrish at the Barrow group, who does all of Mike Birbiglia's work. So that was kind of like a catalyst of like, I love the way that storytelling is done. I love that there's like, a structure to it, but at the same time, like you feel comfortable like you do at stand-up shows. And I never thought that could be a hybrid until I started seeing shows in New York, seeing his shows, especially stuff at the Cherry Lane. And I was lucky enough I've never, by the way, written anything. I've all done I've done it all through voice recording and had it transcribed. So because I get really nervous to type and I think it's pretentious. So I started doing that. And I submitted the first thing I ever I had to submit a script to the She ATL organization in Atlanta last year. And they picked it up as a script, which like felt really validating to me because it was like, oh, I'm being asked as a writer. And then also I performed the show itself. And then I moved back to New York from Georgia. And the She NYC group was like, hey, we're the parent company of this. We really loved the show. You live in New York now. Do you want to be a part of this festival? And I was like, because I knew they worked with the Connolly Theater downtown on East 4th Street. And if you've ever been to that theater, it is stunning. Like, it is a beautiful off-Broadway house that I had never heard of. And I was like, oh my God, what an honor it would be, And so that's what I've gotten to do this week. And it's my dream to do the show like off-Broadway, like for a full run. So getting to kind of have a taste of what that's like in New York, it's so validating. And the audiences are so great. Like last night I got to have like a brief talk back, and that was kind of cool because I'm always the one like you are right now where I'm asking the questions. And so getting to be interviewed felt really good for like a piece of work that I did. And I was like, I'm getting embarrassed now, so I gotta go. But so it's just me doing an hour of storytelling that I've developed for a couple of years that kind of tracks in a funny way generational trauma and how we tell stories and how things get passed down and how we deal with that stuff. And but again, I feel like you can grow more and enjoy trauma a little bit more when you're laughing. Yeah. So it's not by any means like it's closer to Fleabag, it's closer to Nanette, it's closer to a piece of theater where you're like, oh, this is great, oh wait, yikes. I feel like that's the best way to describe it. But it's a lot of fun, and all of my audiences, whether they're in New York or in the South, things hit differently. And so every single night is a different show. I've had friends come 4 or 5 times, not because I pay them, but because they genuinely like to come, which is wild to me. I'm like, girl, save your money. But every time. And I had a friend come last night and she was like, that was a different show than I saw last time. You added all this. This was so funny. And because I literally added riffs every time, because I'm like, that's going to be boring for me if I do the same play for you. And you're going to hear it sound like a script. It sound like lines. And I'm not doing somebody else's work. It's all mine. So if I've got a beef, with the playwright, whatever, like it's just me. So yeah.
Cool. And anything on the horizon that you can talk about?
Well, I'm doing so we're doing the show right now, but it's going to live stream August 9th through the 16th, I believe. So if you're not in New York City, but you would want to try to watch this, you absolutely should. You can get tickets at She NYC. Arts.org, I believe. But it's also like a link in my bio on all my social media platforms because they want to make theater accessible. And so I'm very thankful that I will get that in 2 weeks. Everybody will get to stream it. And last year, I only had about 20 people come to the Atlanta show because we were still height of the pandemic. Like, I totally understood that. It streamed crazy numbers last year. So I'm really glad that I get to utilize like a more national or global like base with this. And so I'm looking forward to that in a couple of weeks. But otherwise, that's been my project. I'm also, a freelance like watercolor artist and illustrations and stuff. So I just did a gallery show 2 months ago. And so I'm hoping I know I don't stop. And so I told myself that for the month of this show, I wasn't going to do any physical art because I needed to focus on the show. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to all the notes that I have in my app of things that I want to paint. After the show closes on Friday, I'm going to get back into that because I miss doing it, but I have to set boundaries because otherwise I get, as you can tell, all over the place. So, yeah.
Well, congratulations on the show, the streaming. We'll have to help promote that. And not that you don't have a PR company to do that, but
no, but it's called To Free a Mockingbird. And I appreciate you saying that, talking about the show because I am really passionate about it. And I've tried very hard through therapy to say, like, I should advocate for myself because as you can tell, like, I love promoting other people's work. I love promoting other people's artistry, but like, we should all believe in ourselves a little bit, right?
I got that exact problem.
Yeah,
promote
I know.
everybody, but when you get to yourself,
Yeah.
you're like, oh,
We're
no,
like
no.
philanthropists. It's just
Yep.
like, why don't we like ourselves? And it's like, no, this work is good. I do a lot of really good work.
Yep.
We should say it because let me tell you, people that suck love promoting their stuff. People that suck are so good at talking about themselves.
So true.
And I'm like, it's the people that are so talented, genuinely, that are like, oh, not me. We have imposter syndrome. No, we're tired of that. It's 2022. We've lived through a pandemic. I mean, if we're still standing, let's gas each other up.
Great way to end an interview. Thank you, Grace. That's great advice for everybody. Thank you so much again for coming on. I look forward to learning more about everything and hearing more about what you're doing in the future. So congratulations on everything.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. We were just speaking with Grace Aki. I could list all the things she does, but it would be another 20 minutes. So we'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming on. Tune in next week as we'll be speaking with another guest or guests about the life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanov. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.